Okay, hey everyone, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuffs. I have another review for you guys from the brand Welly Merck, and they were actually recently rebranded to WM Watch or Wrist Moment, and they're essentially an Asian OEM ODM, so either original equipment manufacturer or original design manufacturer or producer turned factory brand. And essentially, you know, there's a lot of factories out there that are producing a lot of components, and every once in a while those factories will say, hey, well, why don't we come up with kind of our own black label, and we can produce a bunch of the parts that we are already making, and we'll just put our own badge on there. So that's the story of WM Watch, and this is the second WM that I have reviewed. This one is a dive watch. Some key characteristics and design. When you look for a diver, of course you want to find water resistance, typically some type of screw down crown. You want to see something that's tough, legible, with a dive time bezel, and a diver's extension is always nice if on bracelet. This is known as their dive / water sports watch. It's the WM085, and it's homage to the Tudor Pelagos, but at 40 millimeters, sitting between the classic 42 and newer 39 millimeter options. The WM is a much more affordable take on the $5,000 Tudor. These go for $246.99 at full retail direct, but currently are on sale for $121.03. So $121, that is extremely affordable. That is, you know, considering just on paper what this has. But I think what we're going to discover here is that it's not just about what's on paper. There are actual things that are non-subjective in terms of quality that still do matter quite a bit. And thankfully, Welly Merck were very, very open to hearing feedback about their watches, and because they're really doing their best to improve. And we've seen a lot of brands do that over the years, and some brands unfortunately haven't, and they kind of stay where they're at. But I think it's cool that WM is really willing to kind of hear people out in terms of what could be better, and I think I do have a little bit of a list of what could be better for this piece, but at the price point, you know, again, I think it's still totally doable. This unit was actually kindly sent in free of charge by the brand for this review, so big thank you to WM, as well as the fact that, yeah, they were open again to you know, unedited feedback. So with that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, guys, for 120 bucks, I mean, how critical am I going to be? I'd say still decently critical. And the only reason why is because so many watches have gotten so good for very cheap price points. Don't get me wrong, in terms of specs and bullet points on paper, I mean, it's all here, guys. A hacking hand windable movement, ceramic insert, sapphire crystal, lume ceramic insert, applied indices, 3D sculpted chapter ring. You also do have a milled clasp, although it's not a glide lock clasp, it's just their basic flip lock, but it does have a small kind of old school extension in there. You know, solid end links, display case back. I mean, there's a lot here again on paper, but that is something that we do talk about quite a bit on this channel, where it's not just about the specs on paper, because at the end of the day, you're going to hopefully wear the watch. Now, in terms of some of the dimensions, guys, it actually has a 39 millimeter diameter for the case, but it's about 40 at the bezel, where there is a slight overhang, which does help for tactile engagement. I will say that the coin edge on here is actually quite nice. The action, quite nice. There's a little, I mean, it's not even really play. It's just a lighter click. So it's actually a nice, and unfortunately it's slightly off there in terms of the alignment. It looks like it aligns to the outside. Like, look at the middle section of the end link. But then when you look at the dial, it is slightly misaligned. So that's a bummer, because if I scoot a little bit more, it's going to go too far in a click. Like, if I can let it sit there before it clicks, but then it clicks, and it's then you can see that it's actually quite far off, even though you're actually trying to make it align. So kind of a bummer, but again, at the price point, considering what you get, that's a bit of a trade-off. Some of the things you may have to trade off. And then it comes to the thickness, actually not bad, 12.5 millimeters, but it does have a flat sapphire crystal, so that does help, and a relatively flat profile. It does have a 46.5 millimeter lug to lug, so I mean, dimensions wise, I think they did a very nice job. Everything is stainless steel and brushed, so that's a difference, of course, from the Pelagos, which is known for its titanium construction. It does have, of course, that flat sapphire. I didn't see anything listing any type of anti-reflective coating, and I don't see anything that would make me think that there's anti-reflective coating, so I'm going to go ahead and say probably no anti-reflective coating, which at this price point, again, not a deal breaker. You do have, of course, this Lume ceramic insert, which is actually very nicely executed, and you do have a screw down crown, which is unsigned, which again, at this price point, also not a deal breaker. The movement inside that you actually can see, which is pretty cool, is your Miyota 8215, and this is one of the hacking models. Unfortunately, I can't say every single 82 series or 8000 series Miyota movement does hack, but I will say that some of them do, and this is one of them. So pretty much all the newer batch ones are going to be hacking, and you can see they're very industrial finished, you know, from that perspective. These are kind of a little bit less popular and less expensive than like the comparable Seiko movement, which is also going to still have only 3 hertz as well in terms of the beat rate. So 42-hour power reserve, not bad. 3 hertz beat rate, which is going to be 21,600 vibrations per hour, which also is not bad at all. The display case back lets you see the movement. The dial, very nice. You're getting matte black with a nice grain texture, raised indices. You're getting the date at 3 o'clock. And you're getting an unspecified lume that does glow green. Now, the lume is what kind of gives this watch away in terms of its price point. And so when we get to the lume portion, then I think it'll become a little clearer as to why I might be so critical of this watch, because typically it's a nice green flag when a watch has exceptional lume, because if they paid attention to those details, right, that are only prevalent in the dark in a very specific, you know, type of situation, it means you can typically trust kind of the rest of the build. In this case, unfortunately, I think they do fall short on the lume side. It does have 100 meters or 10 bar of water resistance, which again, not quite a deal breaker. It'd be nice to get at least 200 meters of water resistance, because you can get 200 meters of water resistance from like an Invicta Pro Diver. And then it has 20 millimeter lug width. So if you do want to get this on another strap, which I think, of course, this would look great on multiple straps because of the design, right? It's pretty ubiquitous. Solid 3 links, solid end links, screw pin construction, right? Hey, these are all the things people love to find on stat sheets, you know, screw pins, everything like that. Solid construction, nice taper from 20 millimeters down to 16, 18 millimeter flip lock style, clasped a little bit sharp around some of the finishes here, as you guys can see. A little sharp, especially considering its friction fit, you know, not the greatest fitment here, but there are actually 3 positions of micro adjust in here that you actually would have to kind of scoot over. Let me pop the extension out. So you see there is like a little extension if it does get hot, so you do get a little bit of an extension there that no one will see, which I appreciate that. But you can also see there's a little spot for, if I can get it, the light on it, then the camera will allow me to focus, but with no light it doesn't want to. There we go. So you can see there's a little spot right there, and essentially you take a spring bar tool and you can work that out, so you can have it on the furthest inside setting, but essentially there's 2 other little dimples, and you can get 3 different positions there. So let me get this to snap back into place. Yeah, so with all that said, let's actually get it on the wrist and see how it wears. Okay, it even wears well, guys. Check that out on my 7.5 inch wrist. I think this looks nice, and although 7.5 inches is slightly on the larger side of average, you guys can see it's also quite a tall and round wrist, so it's not like I have this wide, flat, accommodating wrist. Of course, if I get my wrist a bit too close to the camera lens, you're going to get some perspective distortion. It's going to make the watch seem a lot larger than it actually is. So what I like to do is keep my wrist nice and low and then just tighten up the frame here so that you guys can still get a detailed look, but just add a bit of a truer aspect ratio as to how this may lay on your own wrist. And check that out. This, numbers wise, right? This works. The dimensions, you know, it feels like a tool watch. Of course, at this thickness, I would have preferred 200 meters. 300 meters would have been even better, but 100 meters with a screw down crown is more than enough. But check that out. It wears really nice. So that's cool, right? I dig that. And that's kind of where I'm at. I'm a little bit torn here because, yeah, there's a lot to like on paper. I mean, I'll say from looking at the listing, you know, for this watch, there's a lot to like, but there are things that I don't like and that I would honestly trade for less specs to just have better execution. So, I mean, the finishing here, although let me give it a quick little wipe. I mean, some of you are just thinking, oh, well, that's just, the polishing is just, you know, it's not great because it's just a little dirty. But you can see there the shape. There's a lot of inconsistencies, right? This is one of the things that makes Zaratsu polish. I'm not saying this needs to be Zaratsu polish, but makes it so special is that it's distortion free. But look at all the distortion on that section. Look at all the sharp edges on here. These are all the parts that you touch. You're having to undo that and flip that, right? And here, it's just, there's a lot of give. There's a lot of shimmy. This isn't too bad, but when you look at it, yeah, you got screw links, but I mean, look at the kind of, it's like they seem a little bit misshapen. The tolerances aren't great. There's like, it doesn't necessarily look like, I don't think these links, at least the parts of them, you know, the components that come together to create this 3-link, I don't think these were milled. I think they were like formed. And when they're formed, you're going to have some weird little shapes, and it's not flat. It's not a flat surface, you know, when you look at that there. So that's just something that, yeah, I do want to make sure that we pay attention to. And I give plenty of companies props when they do these things right. But yeah, here again, like I would rather have something that was executed better, that had pin and collars or that had a friction pin. I would rather have a stamped clasp, you know, with a milled section if it was to a higher tolerance. You know, I won't say I would rather have hollow end links because I mean, I'm pretty much only going to deal with hollow end links if it's a vintage or neo-vintage piece. And these end links aren't too shabby, but, you know, the definition could definitely be better, guys. See the lack of definition, I should say, on the finger here for that male end link. It's just very soft. This is very soft. The finishing there, the transition. You know, you do see, which is nice, there's a level of definition there on the transition that's good to a certain extent, right? Because you can see it. It's nice that you can actually see that if I can get it to focus here, maybe. Let me just actually shrink down the little. I might just have it a little too close to the camera. Okay, all right, I'm trying, guys. Okay, there we go. So, look at that. That's decent. That is decent. But when you are trying to recreate something that looks like this, that is trying to, you know, a watch that really delivers and a lot of people really enjoy, and it's a modern watch, not one you can go back and say, okay, well, this is supposed to be like a vintage Big Crown, and, you know, these standards, if you were to do that 50 years ago, people would have been super impressed. Like these, although again on paper there's a lot that's good here, the tolerances and the execution wouldn't be that impressive. I mean, obviously the materials used, the ceramic, the way that they've been able to integrate the lume, I think that all works. But yeah, again, for me, that's just something that I'm not thrilled about, and those just like little details there, I feel like is where it kind of falls apart. And now we're going to get to the Lume. So let's go ahead and get that set up. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. All right. Yeah, look at that. That is not great. The Lume, you got different shades, different tones. The hands are visible. The dial is not very legible, which kind of defeats the purpose. You can see it's very splotchy on that hour hand. We'll go ahead and hit it with a little bit of the old black light here. Give it a little bit of a supercharge at least so you guys can see where they tried to lume it. And that's one of the things, right? On paper, applied indices, at least at the very least raised indices, right? But look at that. That's unfortunate, guys. You know, I like to make these videos to be quite encouraging and optimistic about brands and models, but I gotta keep it real here. I mean, whew, that is not good. This is a dive watch. This isn't a, you know, a dress watch. It's just like, this Lume isn't a bonus. This Lume is required, and it just falls super short there, guys. So that's very disappointing. So yeah, I mean, at that point, even at the price point, I mean, unless you need something where you just love the look and you just want, you know, again, unfortunately, a bit of a race to the bottom to find something that's like the cheapest watch that can have all of those things that you need, right? Quote unquote need, in those bullet points, in those, all the spec hunters that come in and complain about every expensive watch or semi-expensive watch that I feature that is executed really well and is very useful and usable. You know, this is what I'm talking about. Sometimes it's just not just what's on paper. Like the execution has to give you something. And even in the low light transition, guys, while it's still quite legible in the daylight and it'll do the job, you know. Yeah, if for me, even at that lower price point at $120, I mean, I'd rather have an Invicta at that point. And yeah, I mean, I'm not bashing Invicta. I'm not even bashing this WR watch, to be honest. It's not the worst thing out there, believe me. There are other watches that are worse than this, but this is a dive watch, so there's a lot that it's trying to do. Unfortunately, it's falling short. I mean, there's some things that it did exceedingly well, like that bezel grip and that bezel insert, but yeah, it just needs a new iteration, and hopefully, you know, since they did a rebrand, you guys will know, hey, if it says Welly Merck, probably not the generation you want to get unless it's like some super deep discount sale. You probably want to wait till they rebrand and update and tweak and do some updating there in terms of getting things just, I think, a little bit better put together. So closing thoughts for me, guys, on the wrist, really classic 40mm diver wear. I mean, I like that they did that. They took the aesthetics of the modern Pelagos and they shrunk it down to a sweet spot. I appreciate that. It is a little rough around the edges in terms of fit and finish, though, guys, and that's something that I'm not thrilled about. In terms of model variants, it is also available in a green version as well as a black dial bezel version, but in a two-tone steel gold setup. I haven't experienced those two, but you know, this one was, I would say, the probably the most versatile of the bunch. So check the site links for current options availability and pricing if you are interested. I'll leave that link in the description. Comparable models, it's tough to say, guys, just because there's a wide array of basically kind of factory quote-unquote brands that are doing these types of homages, and some of them are known more for their surprising quality, lack of course, originality, but just executed to a higher level than this. So for me, guys, bottom line, the WM085 Diver Water Sports Watch, aka Tudor Pelagos Homage, is far from perfect and is probably more about being the cheapest versus being the most value rich. But for $120, it's still pretty impressive at a glance. But be warned, the deeper you dig, the more compromises you will find. So while the spec sheet is tall for the price, you pretty much have to keep price in mind to overlook the occasional shortcomings. So that's a decision some of you are cool with, some of you are not. Me, yeah, I probably really wouldn't wear this or gift it. This one is just unfortunately a stepping stone in my eyes to learning, of course, from this and creating better products in the future. But let me know what you all think down in the comments below. If you like the video, please do hit like. And if you're already, please do subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.